Cool. So I'll
Beautiful.
be your host and moderator today, Burnt Boots from the official Zion account. And I'll let you guys each do a little brief introduction.
Mia, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. Well, hi everyone. This is Mia from Hashkey. I'm heading the portfolio as well as the ecosystem growth. And also very proudly have invested in Zion from early days. I'm proud. Good to be here, and let's get started.
Awesome. Calvin?
Hey everyone. Yeah, this is Calvin from Spartan. We're a Web3 focused fund based out of Asia. We've been investing in space since 2017. We're currently managing 3 funds: a hedge fund, a DeFi infra fund, as well as a gaming social fund. Consumer's always been a vertical that we're interested in, and I'm excited to share more thoughts with you guys today.
Awesome. I just got a note from James that he'll be just a little late, but he'll be coming. So we could probably get it kicking. Do you want to kick it off? Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, let's keep it going. So thanks everyone for joining. Today, per the title, we have some of our investors, and we will be discussing everything from emerging narratives, the state of the market, chain abstraction, talking a lot about Zion, how it's grown, all of the above. Very honored to have some of our key investors here, along with our very own Burnt Banksy. So without further ado, here we go, and we have another panelist that just joined. There we go. Welcome, Mr. Velvet Milkman.
Go on, James.
How are you, James?
He's warming up. It's early in the morning on the East Coast, and I'm very appreciative he's here.
Got to do some vocal exercises.
I was going to say, he said that he didn't have Twitter on his phone, so I wonder if he's in the office 8 a.m.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can hear you.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Sorry about that. GM. Very early GM here.
That's what I was just saying.
EGM.
Are you in the office, James? You said you didn't have Twitter on your phone. Did you go to the office already?
Absolutely not.
I was going to say, okay, all right.
I'm at my apartment. But I went to the gym early this morning and just got
Look
back.
at you. Beautiful.
Yeah. Feeling ready to talk abstraction.
No better time
for joining us, my friend. If you want to give a brief introduction, please do so, and then we'll launch right into some of the lines of questioning. Or
all you, James. Well, he gets his mic figured out. Maybe we start. Yeah,
that's fine. Or if you're not feeling too talkative this morning, well, we can.
It is early. I understand.
That's fine. So one of the things we're gonna inquire on to kick this off for our investors. So talking about the importance of a strong founding team and narrative, right? So when you guys first met Burnt Banksy and you first were pitched kind of the Zion vision, right? What were your thoughts around that? How did it fit into your larger narratives? That's the key question, right? So importance of a strong founding team and what were your initial thoughts on the Burnt Banksy and Zion narrative? Mia, happy to we'll go to you first with this one, and then Calvin, and then James.
Yeah. Actually, I believe that Hashkey invested in the team even before I joined Hashkey. But I think the time that I got to know Banksy, as well as get to know this new narrative that they're building, it was the first time that I see someone like this really passionate about something. And I think initially when I took over the project from the remaining of the investment team, it was a completely different story. But when Banksy present about this new narrative on the chain abstraction, it was a whole new story that I was saying, and I was really fascinated by the fast moving type of working style that the team have been pushing on, as well as how clear that they have think about they want to be very user driven, as well as think everything from the user perspective instead of similar to other more core dApp type thing from very techy sites. That's what we really need, and I guess as a fresh meat, it was very fascinating, and it has also been pleasure to see how the team has rolled out the things that they put on white paper into something that's real, into so many actual users, as well as the clients, and so many chains that have been integrated in the past like 6 months or so. That was amazing.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mia.
I
Calvin?
appreciate those kind words. Actually, Mia, I did not know that you were brand new. I remember you getting added to the chat.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I actually had no idea because we definitely knew you. I mean, for all those who don't know, I think everyone on the panel invested as a Solana DeFi marketplace,
Yeah.
and so it's interesting. I guess we probably never even really knew each other as me running a Solana DeFi marketplace, right?
Yeah, like I
That's
hop up
awesome.
to the call, like looking to like hear some updates about like
Are you
how you
guys
plan to write
alive?
off like the DeFi portion of Solana.
am
But
I
then
am
when
I
we met,
putting
I was
this
like
on the
told you a
zero?
story. Yeah, it was a good surprise.
Well, I'm glad. Awesome, cool. Calvin, you want to take it?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for Spartan, Spartan actually invested in Burnt before it turned into Zion. It was actually before my time as well. But by the time I got to know Burnt, the first impression was certainly quite bold. He was quite charismatic. And just generally being able to think out of the box. I was looking at all these news reports and was like, I'm not sure about all these spy stunts. But hey, it's not every day you see everyone, burning down a famous piece of artwork and going as far as, lighting himself on fire. But yeah, as I get to spend more time with Bert, I realize he's like quite long term oriented. Um, I think it's really important to note that a lot of founders didn't manage to stick around or make it out from the 2020 timeline. And yeah, I think Bernd did a great job with that. This leads me to the criteria of a strong founding team. I think it just really involves being resourceful, it's being agile, and like I mentioned, just being able to think out of the box. Right, market moves very quickly in crypto, narratives changes. So yeah, it is very important for founders to move accordingly.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I think it's good. We've definitely gotten close as well, which makes me very happy. And it's been a lot of fun. I think you've definitely seen my fair shares of trying to bounce ideas off and being like, Anthony, I think that's really fucking stupid. Oh yeah, I've definitely been passionate. I forgot about that. James, you want to take it?
Hey everybody. Okay, hopefully my microphone working?
Yeah, you're
Hello?
good.
Okay,
Yeah, you're good. You're
okay,
good.
okay, cool, awesome. Yeah, so I guess I'm the odd man out here, or person out here. I was around at our fund when we made the original investment in. Are you like doxxed or are you not doxxed?
Yeah, I'm done. You can say Anthony. It's fine.
Okay. So like we met Anthony when he was raising for his original project, and we were just getting into the space and starting to look at like Solana projects as well. And Anthony lives in New York. I live in New York. The office is in New York, and so we met up in person and got to know each other. And we've been able to build a really strong relationship over the last 3 years. It's been great. We've had dinner. He was at our office last week, and I think like generally speaking, I remember there was a moment maybe early in or maybe later in like 2021 or like early 2022 where I think Anthony is incredible. He's like incredibly hardworking, has built an incredible team, understands the market, understands how to onboard users and how to get attention for sure. But I think also in addition to that has like worked really hard at like building a product that people want to use. And I remember I was like walking, it was like one weekend and we were chatting about like, what does the future of Burnt look like? And there was a discussion around whether whether he should like maybe pivot and change direction. And we talked a little bit about like the Cosmos ecosystem, or at least the Cosmos SDK, I would say, and some other ideas. And a couple months go by, he calls me back up and he's like, Jim, look, like been thinking a lot about what we talked about, and ultimately, like I think I have an idea for something that maybe is a bigger vision, right, than what was originally like the future of Burnt, and it was Zion. And so I think that was over 2 years ago, I think at this point. So, or at least like a year and a half ago.
Yeah,
And so,
definitely.
I mean, as far as chain abstraction and account abstraction goes, these are areas that I think Cosmos has been. I think account abstraction is a thing that, or chain abstraction is actually a thing that like Cosmos has been early to. I think Anthony has been incredibly early to, and has really like pushed the account abstraction and chain abstraction, especially in importance in like sovereign application specific blockchains forward, and is actually making it work. And it's going to make it work in really interesting and like actually like really like intuitive, like actually innovative ways that are going to, I hope and I think, bring more users on to using the blockchain. With like essentially the idea here being removing the blockchaininess from blockchain and just getting the benefits that these distributed ledgers can offer. So it's been a pleasure working with Anthony. It's been a pleasure continuing to work with Anthony. And I think he's like, you look for people, you bet on teams, you bet on ideas. But if you bet on ideas and you don't have a strong team behind it, it's inevitably going to fall short. And I think like what we've seen with Anthony over the years is dedication, conviction, and like this like drive to just like succeed. And that's like the type of things that you want when you're like investing at least in a founder or even a project that you want to work with, or a project that you want to use, or an L1 that you want to build on.
Thank you, James. I appreciate that. I appreciate the kind words. I forgot. I think that was in Mar-a-Lago, Lisbon. I feel like that conversation kind of was the impetus there. Actually, it definitely was, because we met at AVAX Barcelona when we were still toying around with the idea of we were an NFT marketplace, and we were like on Solana, and we're like, we need to go sovereign to build, like effectively to solve what eventually became XION. Probably, James, honestly, probably almost 3 years at this point, which is absolutely insane.
It was 3 years ago.
Wow. Yeah. So, wow, that's absolutely insane. But yeah, Sam, I'll let you keep it going with the questions.
Appreciate it, guys. Great answers already. Next one, we want to kind of scope out a little bit and take like a larger macro look. So and I think, I speak for all of us when I say it's definitely the case, if the long tail goal of crypto as an industry is eventually onboarding more and more users, right? What would you guys each respectively say the biggest challenges that the industry faces in terms of achieving that, right? What are the biggest roadblocks that we face holistically, as a sector in tech or whatever you want to say, that are preventing us from onboarding that, quote unquote, as cliched as it is, that next billion users. Right. So, Calvin, do you want to take a stab at that to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think the very goal of crypto has always been to onboard new users, as many as possible. And this can be done in a few ways, right? So it could be through gaming, it could be through social, prediction markets, consumer apps. This is why a lot of people are talking about, these apps, ton, and they even like, account abstraction, chain abstraction nowadays, because they will be able to, garner a bunch of large user flow, and gives, the hope that it could potentially utilize this user flow, convert them into Web3 users, and become the next super app. That being said, onboarding adoption goes then to other core infrastructures like intent and yeah, I guess like I mentioned, like account abstraction and chain abstraction. There are a lot of challenges currently, at least to non-crypto natives. They're mostly like private public keys, token approvals, gas adjusting, bridging, swapping through different dexes, on-off ramp, etc. I think to these non-crypto native users, familiarity is certainly the key. Whether it's utilizing what they already have or via Web2 experience. And I think XION's solution is in a very good position to address that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Calvin. James, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I put food in my
We
mouth.
can pass it to me. We can pass it to me if you want to.
Yeah,
No,
yeah.
no.
We'll let James
Actually,
chew.
no, I'm ready. I'm ready. But Anthony, I am actually very interested in your perspective on this. I think, but like from my perspective, it's like daily active users, right? I think
Yep.
that we have a lot of people building infrastructure. We have a lot of people building applications, and we have like I think there's been some malaise in the application layer. There's a lot of like
Yep.
yield farming going on. There's a lot of just like Ponzonomics, like kind of token games being played. And I think, you know, here's the crazy thing about it, right? Is like I'm in a weird mood today, but like essentially, like here's the crazy thing about it, right? Is that ultimately Web2 companies, startups raise $500,000 or less,
Yep.
and they get an MVP out.
Yep.
And they look for user adoption. $500,000. The valuations of these startups in Web2 that have actual users, right, are roughly around $5 million.
Yep.
The pre-seed. You have, excuse my language, I'm a little older, kids right out of college, raising tens of millions of dollars on a deck to build an application, or like millions and millions of dollars, right? So multiples, tens of like more orders of magnitude more, to build in ecosystems that have. Let's never mind the next billion users. Why don't we try to get a couple 100,000 users on your chain, right? And I think like that's like, and so like we're giving people who have never had another job in their lives, who never worked a job in their life, millions of dollars to build in an area where there maybe are no users and they have no idea how to do user acquisition. They have no idea how to build companies that have a sustainable life cycle, that products that people want to use, that don't include like financial incentives, pumped financial incentives to do so. So what I think you need to do, frankly, is like the unsexy work. And I think that's how you get the next billion, next couple of 100,000 people. You do the unsexy work. You go to places. You figure out like who the heck is using Tron right now. You go to those places. You go check them out. You sit there. You live there. You download a Tron wallet. You use it. You talk to people. It's like it's literally like the hard work and the work of like just doing what is necessary to like figure out where the users are and then build something the users want. And I think where XION comes in here is that like, you know, and one of the things that like that means is that you have to build products that people can use and that are easy to use and intuitive. XION's like ability to do account abstraction and the ability to like kind of pay for gas in US dollar, US like in stable coins, or at least to the user, it feels like they're paying gas in stable coins, is definitely a marked difference from what we've seen on a lot of other chains, and is ultimately going to be like one of those like key differentiators. You know, everybody talks about Web2, everybody talks about bringing Web2 companies on board. XION has made a distinct push into that area and worked with founders and projects that are have connections in that space. It's not easy work. It's hard, but like I think there are big and huge rewards for the founders and the teams that actually do focus on this as like a and don't lose track of and don't lose focus on like doing the unsexy work. And the unsexy work is like ultimately what winds up creating like, you know, the stickiest products and the products that people want to use, because like actually they're doing the work to like understand their users, understand people, and like what they need and what their motivations are and what their incentives are, and then building something that they want to use, not something that they're using because they make 20 tokens a day as long as they do X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, and you asked a lot there that kind of there's a lot of compounding factors, and especially kind of what you were talking about, James, right? Because I think number one, like to kind of address the why college kids are coming out of school and being able to raise a bunch of this money is because I think the knowledge of crypto is actually the hard part. I think the resources of 20 years of Y Combinator, or however long it's been, and everything online, you know, it almost feels like Web two, like Web two startups are kind of like a playbook, right? Where you know you raise 500 and then you get the users and then you hit these milestones and you either hit it, you don't. You're just consistently at this game of you either hit it, you don't. Um, Plus, also, there's like a liquidity premium, right? Like if you were betting on a startup, um, in the year 2000, you would probably expect it to go IPO in 2015, right? And so you're taking significantly more, you're taking significantly more of a gamble, and I think that's reflected in the pricing of the rounds. When if you were to fund something in 2024, you could you could probably actually expect a couple of years for liquidity to kind of come in with vesting and everything. Unless you're like a few guys. Sorry. But I think, I think the idea that it kind of comes with that is there's also chicken and eggs problem that exists in the industry, which is it doesn't even make sense to be an application, quite frankly. And like I think we could talk about just the fact of like, yeah, infrastructure is better, it's sexier, it needs to happen, it needs to be there. But I think right now the total users are just completely capped at MetaMask wallets, right? At the amount of wallets, and the friction rates are extremely high. And I think when you try to take this concept of the Y Combinator model, which is hey, hit hypergrowth, hit these milestones, play this playbook. It ends up not working because there's not enough users in the industry to justify that growth milestones. And then additionally, the friction is too high to be able to hit anything outside of that milestone. So like the logical kind of path is right, you can very easily with financial incentives get that first milestone of crypto users. But inherently what you kind of see after that is projects switching to infrastructure, and saying, well, there's literally no users for this. And we say this because this is also a little bit what happened to us, right? When let's take it back to 2021, where we were running the Solana marketplace, right? And we had, 30,000 monthly active users, but it's at that time that was everyone. that was a lot of people. And then the bear market came, and then there were 3 people in the industry. And for us, being an application in that scenario doesn't make sense. And we found ourselves in a, I know James will probably know this the best out of everyone, but we tried building, a ticketing application, which we tested out on Halloween, where James was sent a very janky ticket to. We tried building the applications, and then as a crypto product, you're still in this really weird middle ground of, like my audience is crypto versus my audience is people who want tickets. And I think until we can remove the crypto out of that, we're not going to be able to solve this friction problem to be able to promote this kind of Y Combinator style growth that is required for startups in this stage. But I want you to. I'd love to hear your opinions as well.
Oh, great. Well, I mean, definitely agree with all the things that you've discussed by far, particularly on the user-friendly side. Well, I think just two minor things to add on top is so uh like one thing that people like, especially the ecosystem they're building as like L1 or L2, like what people are craving for is like 100,000s of apps they're building on top, and that has been the golden criteria of how we evaluate whether an ecosystem is active or performing good or not. But essentially, at the end of the day, do we really need like that many new applications, or should we just convert some of the like existing user behaviors as well as like the app, or let's say the brands that they are used to, and integrate like some blockchain technology to even like create more robust experience. So I guess creating something new versus continue to iterate on something that's already quite good into something better has been a dilemma that I've seen like in the overall blockchain like a space, I would say. So like what I think Zion has been really great is like not as like super crazily aggressive into like expanding the number of dApps like or that's integrated. Instead they're trying to spend time to build like to make each use cases like with its uniqueness. For example, well, I think like the brands that you've been working with, it really make a case of like why people really need like blockchain into like that use case. So I think like that is something that we do want to shout out as like to try to like emphasize on the things that that would actually make the experience better instead of just trying to like create something new for the sake of like creating some new stuff. And the other thing is like in order to like to reach like this mass adoption stage, right? The institutions have to come in space. And what the institutions care about is definitely the security. And that's also one of the big challenges that we've seen is like either onboarding like the big users as well as like the liquidity into like this space is what people are quite concerned about what's going on in too many scams they don't understand, and there's all been the barrier of like why they cannot get aborted, and that's also where the majority of the liquidity actually lies on. So I guess that's another thing that there might be a separate topic, but I guess like securities is a huge thing that what I think every single ecosystem should address the most.
Definitely, and it's funny that you say that because it's definitely the team is awesome, and it's funny of just being kind of stacked with Web3 OGs, and it's always very funny when most like there's a lot obviously that kind of goes into when you say security, right? There's two different types, right? There's protocol security in my mind, and then there's like user security, right? Which is phishing, malicious links, really kind of more social engineering than anything. Um, and a lot of that is, especially as an infrastructure project, it's it's really, and I think especially with this industry, it's very interesting because, I feel that a lot of our work ends up being the cleanup of the poor decisions made before us, where rather than kind of dealing with the problem or saying, hey, this is a very difficult issue, we should look to solve it. It was, let's just put the onus on the user. A very good example there is like gas fees or wallets. And I think trying to be able to remove or make the process simpler looks a lot different for everyone, especially like we are still balancing this kind of power user dynamic and this new user inflow. And most of it's quite frankly done via design, not necessarily much else, right? It's the ability to have an advanced security tab and say, actually, I'd like my ledger. I would like to add multi-factor authentication, rotate my private keys every 6 months, things like that. That's very, very exciting if you care about it, right? Like, but if you don't care about it, it doesn't, it's another tab on the page. And I think you actually said something really, really cool earlier as well, which is along the lines of like, do we really need new applications? And I don't think that there are new applications in this industry. I think there's a lot of the same thing going on with like the product market fit being airdrop farming, but on chain X. And it's very funny. I was talking to, I don't know if anyone here has met Jose yet, but we'll do a nice introduction. Our head of ecosystem. It's funny how many calls a day he gets where we end up passing them over to Injective or someone and just saying, listen, like it just wouldn't make sense. Like there's we're not looking to build this like ecosystem of 90,000 dexes. We're trying to prove out these use cases, and we think the tools that we've built have been very indicative of, uh, as you said, trying to find use cases where they exist. And I think once we've gotten past that, actually the onboarding process and the time to deployment has absolutely gone down dramatically. And I think that's one of the main focuses. One of the main things about being a startup is you gotta pick your focuses. And if you try to do everything at once, you're gonna fail. But if you try to do something really, 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 really good, that's normally your sweet spot. And then maybe eventually you can kind of start getting bigger. But do something really amazingly and absolutely kill it. And then I think I think that's a very good point.
Thank you, guys. I think that brings us to like an interesting question. I was going to get to this one later, but I feel like it's pertinent now, right? So we just discussed kind of we've hit on a little bit about how science changed already. We've talked about the state of the market and the unique differences between, say a Web 2 startup growth arc and how that's uniquely different than the Web 3 playbook. So, and then we've also talked about, the challenges to on like mass adoption and onboarding new users, which we all agree is a pretty critical point of the entire macro crypto life cycle. So the question I would pose to all of you now is, how would you like to see Zion evolve over the coming years to continue to kind of realize its vision and also most efficiently capture this you know new user onboarding, right? Mia, if you want to go on this one again, I really liked your answer to the last question. If you want to keep rolling, feel free to go ahead and speak to that one.
Yeah. Well, I think like long sentence short is like the best way that I think we would like to see Zion exist is the people will feel that it almost doesn't exist. That's like the perfect standard that like if blockchain can be best used in the real life use cases. That means as a user, I won't even know what's in the back end and what is the chain that I'm relying on. Like
That is
what is the
exactly what I say.
token?
Love
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So like if we know you're there and we can't even feel that you're there, like that's the vision that I think like we would really love to see. It might not be in months, maybe in years, but that will be like what we will aim for, like together with Zion.
Fantastic. I think it's clear that our
That's literally the answer
incentives
that
here
I
are
give.
aligned.
That's very funny. Yeah, that's literally the answer. I'm like trying to think. I'm like, if she's seen the podcast, like I say this all the time. I love that.
Good.
I mean, I know this might be contradictory to the last question, but I think there's a lot of, I mean, look, Anthony, you mentioned before that like you tried to do this like ticketing thing and like it didn't work, right? Or like there's just no users because it's like crypto users are small. Like I think we're seeing like a resurgence in like, and maybe it's just because it's the election, but we're seeing like, really interesting numbers at a poly market. And we're seeing like actual mainstream media attention to poly market and prediction markets now. As a result of that, when it comes to like, the election in the United States right now, presidential election, like this is an idea that existed and Vitalik wrote about, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. And just now, are we at the point where maybe it's the infrastructure, maybe it's the there's enough recognition of blockchain, maybe it's enough that like the infrastructure can kind of abstract away the fact that like it even is on the blockchain. Most people don't even know it's on Polygon, even though it says Poly Market. The Poly is in the name of it, and that's like a pretty big step forward, right? And I think a lot of these use cases that people had and these ideas that people had for where blockchain can be used and the applications, like they're just too early. And that's like, you have to have a good idea, but the timing is actually almost more important oftentimes than like the idea. And so I don't know whether they're new applications, but because they've been tried before. But I do think that you can see and begin to see the use cases for decentralized applications become more prevalent and more relevant. And some of these ideas that like maybe have been tried before and tried many times before and failed, perhaps now or in the next like few years we'll see these like actually come up, and it's not just about what you know, right? It's about who
Yep.
you know. One of the reasons that like ticket things is really hard, like I invested in like a blockchain ticket service ICO in 2016,
Yeah.
right? So like this idea has been around for a long time,
Hmm.
right? And the challenge is that like you need to have some sort of like
In.
in some watershed moment, some musician or act that like actually or company that like quite frankly says, you know what, let's give it a shot and let's see how it works, and it works really really well. And like again, that goes back to doing like kind of, yeah, it's about who you know, but it's also doing like this like really grinding on the BD side and like convincing and the unsexy work that like some people love and other people are just like, give me the flashy,
Yeah. Give me the fun.
numbers and like give me the tokens,
I
give me
think
the
a great.
inflation, give me the up
Yeah.
only, right? And like it's going to be harder to onboard a billion people than it is than
Yeah.
10,000, right? But I bet when you had 100 people, 10,000 seemed like an impossible
Hmm.
number. And so it's about like just doing the work and like having to continue to do that work and like not getting tired. And if you get really rich in the meantime, like not losing that drive to continue that like you kind of have a higher calling than like up only
Yeah.
economics.
No, exactly. And I think like, there's great examples to that, right? Like Stake has been using crypto for a very, very long time, for gambling, right? And I think, Polymarket's been around for, as long as I can remember. We went to NYU at the same time and he dropped out freshman year, to start Polymarket. So it's very, but I think before, if anyone remembers bridging to Polygon and what bridging to Polygon looked like, it was multiple days long. It was the worst thing you could ever possibly imagine. And so it's like to the point, like I think things are getting bigger. And the interesting, I always love to see, because every 2 years I've noticed that like something comes out like this, which is like the desocialize it, whatever, right? And like the first one in my mind was BitClout. BitClout had this really interesting up-down dynamic, and people were like, "Wow, this is gonna be the future." That died. Then you're the same thing with Friendtech. And I think incrementally you could see a very big, a very, very big difference, right? Like they use Privy, you could do your email, but it was still very crypto denominated. It was still very speculative trading that ended up in kind of disaster. And so it's like I think there's naturally a lot of components to this, and I think with everything there's going to take a lot of attempts, right? Like you even read early stories of Netflix, right? Like a lot of people were trying to do streaming, and they always wanted to do streaming, but kind of at the timing that they were doing DVDs, until inevitably the technology was there for them to do streaming, and then took advantage of the market. And I think you're going to see that in a lot of different verticals in this industry.
Yeah, and look, I mean, like the news came out that Sony's building an L2, right?
Yeah.
So like they're coming. It's coming slow. Maybe it's not going to come exactly the way that we anticipated, but like this is something that we talked about, and we kind of assumed that like if a major gaming studio is going to like build on blockchain, like they're probably not going to build on a single one and pick a winner. They're going to pick a winner, all right. They're going to pick themselves, and so like but we're seeing it, right? And so it's like these are incremental steps, and not every company is a Sony. So like if you're a ticketing company, like maybe Ticketmaster has its own chain, right? And like okay, Ticketmaster its own chain, but like bands like Pearl Jam, like or Live Nation, right? Like bands like Pearl Jam, for example, they hate they don't go to Live Nation stadiums, and so like there's ways where you can start to pick off like some of these users and some of these bands, and then I think that there is a flywheel effect there potentially.
No, I agree. And I think we've been working with a couple of music projects this whole time, and it's obviously, I know we talk about it, but it's definitely one of my more favorite topics as it relates to projects building. But I think, to that point, like I think that's where we try to position ourselves as well, which is, I think I saw firsthand that Solana effectively proved that ETH won't be this winner takes all, and I think we're no matter what operating into a multi-chain environment. And so I think being able to kind of accommodate that and being able to accommodate that future is exciting. Calvin, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I pretty much agree to what Jim and Mia just mentioned. I think ultimately, what at least we hope is that Zion could become an entry point for a lot of newcomers to experience all their favorite dApps right on one interface. So, imagine just going into the app, interact with any dApps with full interoperability without worrying about any wallet, bridging, gas, everything is extracted from you. So I completely agree to the saying of like there but not really there. I think you guys did a very good job on one of your testnet tasks as well. So you guys did like an NFT mint with Neutron. I remember. I think it serves as a very good example of what's more to come in the future. The entire experience is very seamless. It's one interface, but you'll be able to do activities on a separate chain, right? So you don't have to go through different tabs, switch wallets, bridge, and stuff. Yeah, and I'm actually quite, excited about the partnership you guys with Circle that you guys have as well. I think it's just really exciting given the recent news about Apple opening up their NFC chips to third parties. I was thinking more about like just simple use cases like payments the other day. I was just talking to a friend of mine. I was just like, I kind of just want to pay you crypto right now. I just want to tap your phone and then just pay you, but I can't seem to do that right now. So yeah, perhaps something like this will be able to activate that, and then um, together with Zion, being able to serve a greater Web2 crowd.
We
So yeah,
actually have
that's the
that in the
vision
works
there.
right now. There's a I believe they started off as email to email, but that is exactly where they're going. So stay tuned for that.
Yep, that's exciting. Yep.
Awesome.
Very cool, guys. A lot of good insights there. I think kind of a natural segue into another good question that we'd like to get you guys' take on. So, from the perspective of investors, right? If you have portfolio companies that come to you and ask where you think they should build, um, which ones are you going to direct to Zion and why? Right? Um, who wants to go first here? James, how you feel?
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
Definitely. Can you hear me?
Yeah, here's
Yes, sir.
Okay. Sorry, I'm in a tunnel, so I'm not sure. I'm taking this call from everywhere today. So yeah, I think there's quite a few actually. Like we just made an introduction to a team that's like building in the Cosmos ecosystem or like a Cosmos SDK ecosystem, and it's gonna have a lot of roll-ups on it, right? And so one of the things that we were talking with Anthony, and he was like, "Hey, like maybe there's like an opportunity for us to work together," and I genuinely think there is. And so I think one thing is like, how do you, if you have a system that has, you know, a lot of interacting pieces, potentially on different chains, something like chain abstraction sounds like a very valuable thing to have just for just user experience and to kind of like reduce some of the frictions. So if you're like shared settlement layer or like, you know, maybe something like Dimension or Astria or Inertia, like I have a feeling that like these types of ecosystems, it's gonna kind of get painful. It's even sometimes like maybe more painful than you know, bridging to an L2 on like Ethereum, because like a lot of the L2s on Ethereum are general purpose smart contract platforms, right? It's like Ethereum on top of Ethereum. What we've seen in the Cosmos system ecosystem is like application specific blockchains, and so it's, I think, relevant, or at least like I think it's like correct directionally to assume a lot of the rollups will be application specific rollups, right? So reducing fragmentation, or like the appearance of fragmentation, liquidity fragmentation, I think is, and composability, I think is like super important. Chain abstraction can help with that. I think the fact that you're going to be able to have this like native account abstraction where you are paying gas in small amounts, like in stable coins, and users can just kind of like onboard, pay in USDC on Noble or from Noble, and just like pay for services, goods and services, makes like everyday interactions that like people have with delivery apps, that they have with Amazon, PayPal, like essentially Zion is a decentralized PayPal in a lot of ways, right? You can have a pay button and it could just be a Zion, it could be connected to Zion, be connected to your wallet, your digital wallet, and really see no difference in the user experience. And like, I think one of the, so I think one of the things that like we're talking to a couple of teams that are doing sort of like, you know, kind of like Caviar or Grubhub or something like that. Those types of teams that are trying to build this stuff on chain, like seems like chain abstraction and actual account abstraction is going to be like super relevant and super important for them. The users aren't going to want to pay in some like gas token. Like nobody wants to see like price volatility on like, you know, like, oh, I thought I could pay for this, you know, good or service yesterday, and actually token price went down, and now I can't pay for, like my wallet doesn't allow me to. I'm using a very broad example here, but like let's say assume there's Uber on chain. Like the last thing I want to do is like, I had money in my wallet, I could pay for that trip to work or wherever I'm
No, I
going
can't. Get out
yesterday,
of the
and
car.
today I can't. Yeah, get out of, like, sorry, you don't have enough money in your wallet, you have to like top up, right? That's kind of a weird user experience. And so to the extent that you can like remove that or eliminate that, which I think Zion will do, like that's super valuable, and I think it's going to be really helpful. So like those are the types of teams. So like I think consumer products, we're hearing a lot of demand for consumer products. Consumer products like are going to want to use like and be integrated with something like Zion, or just use Zion. Like you don't have to do something like Zion. You could just use and integrate with Zion itself.
Oh yeah, and I think Mia just
It's
had
here.
to.
It's
It's
here.
here.
The tech is
We're here,
ready.
boys. The timing
The
is
tech,
right.
it's The timing is
You know
now.
what? It's so
The,
funny
it's
that,
here.
like,
The tech is
Jay, I
ready.
know a little anecdotal side note here. It's very funny. Like, I think a lot of the tech has been here for, I would say, a while. In some ways, right? Like, and I know we kind of talked about this with the SDK and the concept of interchain accounts and the concept of like, um, ICAs and IBC, and then there's a OddZ is another one that we were kind of thinking of, which is like, but the issue is that, like, I feel most of these tools have been not used for their correct use cases. And I think a really great example is the concept of OddZ, which is this kind of permissions module in the SDK. And effectively, it allows you to say, I give permissions for, and then whatever, right? We've kind of manipulated that whatever to be a governance aspect, but it was previously used only for restaking, right? And only for saying I approve to restake. But like for us, the way that we use that is by making this security mechanism between, protocol and user, and saying like, hey, can you give me permissions to get your account balance, do this, spend up to this, and then you can also change the limits of that. And so and then the same thing with interchain accounts. Like, this isn't, and if you really want to get into some fun topics, we could talk about how ICS beat Eigenlayer by like 2 years, and but like, so it's always interesting of just how a lot of these concepts aren't inherently new, but like you're getting applications of them in a much more real way. And I think that's extremely, extremely exciting. Calvin, you want to take it?
Yeah, so completely agree to what to what Jim and you just mentioned. I think if a portfolio company wants to focus more on owning the user experience and just focusing on um, the general crypto masses, I think Zion would be a very good choice. I think one point that I do want to bring up is, Zion presents a very good solution that actually gives more power back to dApp developers, right? Going back to the previous question when you guys were mentioning there are some Web2 dApps not being able to capture mind share or being successful in Web3. I think there are a lot of obviously there are a lot of like reasons for that, but for reasons that are Web3 related, for example, like, I'm gonna build on X, Y, and Z chain, but I'm worried that X, Y, and Z chain won't have enough users, right? So my app won't take off, right? I think Zion presents a very good choice um, for these apps to essentially just focus on user experience of their apps, right? These app developers shouldn't be penalized by the chain of their choice, right? They should have more and could have more control. And that aspect shouldn't impact how users interact with our product, right? And yeah, it should be an optimal infrastructure decision, and Zion could be that. Just that solution for dApp developers to just focus on user experience, um, bring in as many users as possible, and not worry about like, oh, this chain will perform well, not enough users, X, Y, and Z. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny, especially in our conversations, which is like, I think that concept of like tribalism in a way is very good for legacy L1s, which is like, these are my users, right? But I think when we go, effectively what we're trying to say is, yes, there are people who know very much of Zion and the marketing here, but it's now that we allow you to do email or what's coming soon is Face ID or social, um, you know, now the users that you could have is just the world. And that I would say the total addressable market obviously kind of like really follows the tech adoption curve as it relates to kind of innovation on our side and things that we can do. But I think it is extremely, extremely easy sell for us, to be able to kind of put that messaging forward. And I think like I'll probably just ask you guys this, but I think as we start to kind of wrap up, obviously we're having a lot of people, building on Zion, who are prepping for their first fundraise. is there any advice that you can give these new projects who, wherever they are, whether they're the white paper's done or the MVP's done, I should say, or they're still at the idea phase? Any tips for anyone as they kind of approach the fundraising environment as a builder on XION? Calvin, you want to take that first?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I think to echo Jim's earlier point, I think, funds and VCs usually, bet on founders, bet on ideas, right? I think when it comes to founders, looking to do the first fundraise, it's important to, state their core problems and that they're looking to solve. They have a clear roadmap, but more importantly, in my opinion, just willing to listen to feedback and the hustle and just be agile. Right? The hustle you can't really teach. I think for the nuances such as like go to market, strategies, tokenomics, I think funds are here, VCs are here to work with you on that, right? But have a good idea, you know, address the core problems that you're looking to solve, have a clear roadmap on how you try and address it. And yeah, if you have an MVP, please demonstrate that. I think crypto is it's more of an experience type of thing. Like you really have to try and use it, right? So if there's anything that is usable or being able to experience it, then it's certainly a big plus. So yeah, those are my points.
Awesome, appreciate it, and you will definitely be seeing a lot of projects coming soon. James, are you in
What was
Manhattan
the
now?
question?
Um,
Yeah, I am.
what was I going to say? The question was there's a lot of builders in the Zion ecosystem either about to go fundraise or thinking about fundraising. As they start to approach this process, what advice can you give them as they maybe come to you?
Okay, so I'm gonna give like the best advice I possibly can, and like recognize here that like I am a venture. I do help run a venture fund. So like this might sound like I'm saying something from my own bags, but like or like how we think about investing, but just like take this with a grain of salt, right? Number one is like the first few hires and like if you're gonna like number one like Anthony's like a solo founder, right? But he has like an incredible team behind him. Solo founding is really hard. He has a great support system though too. He has a number of he works in an office with other founders, and like I think he's probably given him a lot of like I would mention like I would imagine like really great advice, right? On like kind of how to do it well, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and having that sort of like connection to other founders is super important. You can learn from them, you can share ideas. So number one is like be connected to founders, and like obviously like especially if you're building in an ecosystem, like have connections to those founders that are building like that have built the base layer that you're building on top of. Like make sure you're getting enough support that like there's going to be, especially for the first few applications that are building on an L1 or even L2, like I think, you know, the founders will be very, very like hands-on with you. And that's because it's like super important that like you get a good experience and that you're able to launch a product and that you're getting the support that you need because like nobody's going to know how to build on the product on the chain better than they will, right? Because like they're dog fooding it every day. So number one is like, you know, reach out to Anthony, reach out to the team, and make sure that like you're connected with them and that's number one, right? They can also introduce you to like investors. They can introduce you to maybe some other developers that they've met along the way. That's number one. Number two is like the thing I mentioned earlier about like Web2 startups versus Web3, right? Like I think number one, you don't want to like obviously get taken advantage of and like raise it like a like crazy low valuation where you like rather than worry about valuation, right? Which I think is what a lot of VCs worry about. I think really what you want to think about is like run the numbers, see how much capital you need, raise for that amount of capital, give yourself enough runway, and don't get too hung up on valuation at such an early stage, right? Like, I think mostly what you want to do is make sure that you give yourself an opportunity to succeed. And like, as long as you're, and if you think about that as like your number one priority as a founder, I think you're going to find that you will be in a better position than like probably 99% of the projects out there. Hire good people. Your first few hires are going to set the tone. They're going to set the tone for the organization from execution, from a strategy perspective. You need to like each other to some extent. You need to definitely respect each other. Good corporate culture is like super important. And you are starting a company, so like you might think like Web3 is not corporate, and it's not, like in certain instances, but like ultimately you are a founder of a company, and it's your job. You're hiring people. You're giving people like a living, right? And so like really think about the people, think about how you can set yourself up for success. When you start to raise capital, talk to the founders, get like actual like kind of feedback on the investors that like you're speaking with. Find the best funds for you and what you're building. Like it's not always like the same investors for every project. Like we invest a lot in the infrastructure side of things. We think a lot about the application side, and I think hopefully we're going to start to become more generalist over time. But right now, we're still kind of focused on the infrastructure side because that's just what we know best. But like there are teams that focus completely on consumer. There are teams that focus completely on infrastructure. And even if a name is like really big and shiny, that doesn't mean that they're going to be the best fit. So there's like product market fit, right? There's founder product fit. There's investor founder fit. So I think the most important thing that you can do is like be reasonable about like and pragmatic and practical about just about everything, right? And like be willing to be open-minded and have your assumptions challenged, and don't take it personally. Like get people that aren't going to be yes people, right? Find people who are going to challenge you and like be open-minded enough to like hear them out, hear what they're saying, and then like take a step back and consider whether or not they have a point, right? And I think like if you do that, like I think generally speaking, you won't fall into like these traps, right? Where like you think you've come up with this really great idea. There's just only one way to do it, and it's my way. Like generally speaking, most startups like don't actually the end product, and I think maybe even Xion's a good example of this, right? Like what you start with an idea on, and where the product actually and the thing you wind up building ends up can be very different, right? And like I think being just I don't know if it's intellectual honesty, but I think it's more just like being practical and pragmatic and like thinking about like how best to set yourself up and your team for success is going to really pay dividends, like long-term dividends. Have a long-term mindset. Don't have a short-term mindset. And as hard as it is to do for like an early stage startup, like try to work with like an abundance mindset is something that we hear a lot about, like not like a scarcity mindset. If you're too worried about like competition and competitiveness and like all of these small things, you're probably not thinking long term enough. And as a founder, you need to be thinking short term, medium term, and long term. So yeah, that's like just some
It
thoughts.
is very funny because like I've gotten to a point where people ask like who my competitors are, and it's honestly like one of those questions that shouldn't annoy me, but like kind of does because like I think, and it's annoying, right? Because like there's two types of this, right? Like there's who are your competitors because I want to give you a comp, right? Which is like as when you're raising, you want competitors because you want to think about competitors more because you want to be able to connect your vision to something that's tangible, and then maybe draw similarities or differences from that. That's one thing that I wish that I had known earlier. But when you're actually building, don't think about competitors. And I've been in this space for way too long to ever think that someone that I used to think that I compete with. You know who I thought my first competitor was, James? Metaplex.
Who?
Metaplex. So now I have a bottle of champagne in the office that says Metaplex on it. And I'm like, well, this doesn't even like it's so far out of what what we're currently doing. And it just even at the time it didn't even make sense. And it was like at that time, at the very specific time, we were both fighting for the first NFT standard, which we effectively both got. We both worked on the same one at the end. And then the collection standard, same thing. And it was like to then think about like the idea of competition. Like I see a lot of founders. I see a lot of founders look at competition and say, "Well, actually, we're 10 times better. We can't even be competed." Don't say that. That's a stupid thing. First of all, no, you're not. Second of all, second of all, like people want to comp. Like, and that's mainly why they're asking the question, right? So dream big, naturally, and then give people ideas of like why you're better. But when you're actually building, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, competition like is a superpower, right? Like having comps is like it keeps you honest, right? Like if you're building in a space where no one else is building, the first question you should ask yourself is like, okay, did I come up with something innovative and like novel, or did someone else already think of this and like then decided not to do it? Because like they ran the numbers,
they tried it,
and they researched it, and they're like, this was a bad idea, like it didn't work, right? Or maybe it wasn't ready yet, right? Like the ticketing thing that we talked about. But like ultimately, like when you look at like some of the best, like if you just like don't think about don't think about just like crypto, think about just like the real world, right? Like competition makes you better, it ups your game, it ups their game, and you wind up playing a different game. Like you're playing the same game, but you're playing it together, and you're actually making each other better. Like Michael Jordan wouldn't have been Michael Jordan if he wasn't trying to beat Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and like LeBron James wouldn't be LeBron James if Steph Curry, like he probably would still be LeBron James, right? But like he certainly became better, and the wins felt much more like
real,
hard fought when like Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors showed up, right? And so like I think you can view them as like you can be competing, and you can also be on like
this friendly competition, and I think that also exists so strong, and especially like for us in the chain abstraction space, everyone's working on in the chain abstraction space is to legitimately grow the entire pie of the crypto industry. And these are genuinely awesome people where it's like, and even like, I mean, even to like founders, friendly competition is always fun. I think like when competition is naturally bad is when you start like legitimately thinking that they're the problem. And like it doesn't turn to a place of like self growth, it turns to a place of like self sabotage.
Yeah, like we're the best, they're the worst.
Yeah,
it's like
no
not a way to think about it. It's like we're solving hard problems, and like ultimately, like I think when you give a little bit, you get a little bit back. And like there might be a challenge that you're having in one area, and being able to reach out to a team that is like kind of working on the same problem, like they may be thinking the same thing is like really hard, but maybe this is something that they've been spending the last like 6 months on, and they've kind of come up with an idea, and then they can bounce it off of you, and you can bounce it back off them, and you come up with like maybe a better solution than either team could have come up with individually, right? And like both teams are able to use this. Like that's one of the benefits of like open source software in general. And like I think we're just I think it's like it can be a superpower
if you let it.
It can be kryptonite. And it can be either of those if you let it. Exactly. So I think like try to find teams that like you respect, professionally respect, and then like work with them. And recognize that like at some point you're practicing together at like summer league or something like that in basketball. At some point we're going to put the jerseys on and we're going to compete, but at the end of the day, like you respect each other as like professionals, you respect what you're trying to do, you're trying to move forward, you're trying to like make like the more beautiful like kind of infinite sum game. And like that generally is going to mean that like people can succeed. It's not winner take all. And I think in the chain abstraction and like chain and account abstraction space, like it's not going to be winner take all.
It can't be,
right? But like I think it can't be. So like I think generally like that seems like a good place to be. And like if it does become winner take all, then like that's more of a motivating factor to like to just be the best, right? And to work harder and grind harder and like do the hard things that nobody else wants to do. And it might not come down to the tech always, right? It might come down to the business development, it might come down to like sales and marketing.
That was one more thing actually. That was one more thing that I actually forgot to mention. And then we'll wrap up because I know we're 10 minutes late, and Calvin, I don't know if we're holding you. But I see so many I wanted to make a tweet about this, but there's so many developers, so little CEOs. And I think that's such an important factor, which is like I've seen some of the best technology out there. And I feel like this is just obviously like a Silicon Valley trope. But we've had we could get a prediction marketplace built on XION very easily. That's not the hard part, right? The hard part is running a prediction marketplace, right? It's running a company, it's running a business, it's bringing something, it's creating value, and it's like you have a hammer, you have nails, but you need to still do the work to kind of make a house effectively, right? But so I think that like that's such an important thing that I feel like is so severely overlooked, where it's like, to that point that you just said, James, like it probably won't be solved by the tech, it'll probably be sound by like sales, marketing, BD, etc. Like I think that's such a and I'm not sitting here saying don't worry about the engineering at all. I'm totally not saying that, because you won't be anything. You'll be vaporware, right? But I think that I would say 70% of the time is someone who's built something very cool, but has no idea what they built and no idea how to make it valuable. And I think that is such an important lesson that I probably want to do like a workshop or something or writing on. But really, one of the biggest advices that I could give too is like, you're running a company, you're not running an open source software.
Yeah, and one last thing to that, because I think that's a great point, is like as a founder, like maybe you're going to be the CEO as a founder, maybe you're not, right? Like maybe you're going to be the CTO, maybe you're going to be like the head of like, maybe you're going to be like
Maybe you get
COO,
fired.
like maybe you get fired, right? As a co-founder. But like I think one of the things, and this is like something that's said a lot, and maybe people have already heard it, and in that case, sorry, and I'm just kind of repeating like kind of age-old wisdom, but like, there's like kind of like these three categories of people and what they're working on. There's like things you're not good at, that you don't like to do. There's things that you are good at and you don't like to do, and then there's things that like you're great at that you like to do, right? And like what you want to try to do is find people who are great at things that they like to do. And as a founder or co-founder, you're going to wind up doing a lot of things that like you're not good at, that you don't like to do. You're gonna like, or maybe even things you're not good at that you do like to do, or things that you're good at and you don't like to do. And over time, what you want to do is try to remove those by hiring really talented people who that is their strong suit, and that's what gets them up in the morning. That's what motivates them. And you want to make sure that you're trying to remove as much of those one side that says I don't like to do this or I'm not good at this, and really focus on the thing that like is your
Bread and butter. Yeah.
is the thing you get up in the morning for and that you're the best at doing. And like that might be any of those things, it might be even none of those things, and being aware of that and self-aware and self-reflective enough to like step back occasionally and go, okay, what is best for the company?
Yeah.
What is best for the protocol? That is super important, and ultimately will like lead to success, because like everyone is doing what they love to do. And in that situation, like you're going to be.
Yeah, if you ever met me and Montes and Jean, we're three extremely different people, and you're like, how the hell do they get along? But to this exact point of like, these are the opposites in a lot of these ways, and it works really, really well. But I think with that being said, Calvin, unless you have anything, I know we're 13 minutes over. Got a lot of stuff to do today, but I appreciate so we'll start wrapping up. But I appreciate thank you, Mia. I know you had to leave, but there'll be a recording. James, Jim, whatever you call yourself these days, Calvin. It's always a pleasure talking to you guys, genuinely. And I can say with uttermost honesty that like you guys are some of the investors that I talk to absolutely the most, and if not on a almost day by day basis, every time is always a great conversation, whether it's online or in person. I've learned a lot from you guys, and it's definitely been crazy to fucking see all of everything happening. And it's exciting. And I'm glad we could be here to talk about this. And we're gonna look back on this and say, wow, look where we came from. So I appreciate you guys, and thank you for the time and going over. Thank you for everyone listening. I appreciate it. Have a good one.